Are we allowed to be happy? That question drifted across the golden light of a Charleston evening, lingering between the quiet hum of jazz and the soft chime of silverware. Then came the words that shattered it all. You people should stick to cleaning tables, not touching dying kids. That sentence cut through the restaurant air like a blade through silk. Every sound froze, the laughter, the music, the delicate rhythm of life that only places built for the rich can afford to ignore. In the corner booth sat Vaughn, the billionaire every magazine called a genius, the kind of man whose name opened doors even in silence. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He didn't have to. The power around him spoke for him. Across the room, the waitress, who'd just been humiliated, stood perfectly still. Her tray trembled, but her eyes didn't. Her name was Amara Lewis. 27 years old, black, graceful, and unshakable. A quiet fire disguised beneath a beige uniform and a name tag that didn't even begin to tell her story. The insult had come from a woman in pearls, one of those who wore her cruelty like perfume, expensive and unapologetic. She smirked, waiting for the room to join her. But the silence that followed wasn't agreement. It was shame. The narrator's voice softens. You see, Amara wasn't supposed to speak back. Not here, not in this temple of quiet wealth. But when she finally did, her voice didn't break. It bloomed. I've seen that look before, she said, her tone calm but cutting through the air like light through fog. My little sister had the same eyes before she went away. Every head in the room turned. Elliot's hand froze midair, his wine glass trembling slightly. No one ever mentioned death near his children. No one dared. Not so gently, not so humanly. In front of him sat the Vaughn twins, two small girls whose faces carried both innocence and illness. Rumor had it they had only a week to live, a rare genetic condition that no money could heal. The staff whispered it. The guests stared, some with pity, some with curiosity. But Amara didn't stare. She saw them. The restaurant manager hurried forward, face red with corporate panic. Apologize to Mr. Vaughn this instant. But Amara didn't move, didn't bow, didn't break. No child should be made to feel like a ghost before they're gone, she said softly. And for a heartbeat, the whole world seemed to stop. Elliot looked at her not with anger, but with something he hadn't felt in years, curiosity, maybe even respect. That was the moment everything began to change. This isn't a story about power or privilege. This is a story about a humanity. About a black woman who refused to stay invisible in a room built to ignore her. You're watching Hidden Truths, the stories that stay. Stay with me, because what happens next will test everything you believe about grace, about faith, and about what it truly means to heal. The next morning, Amara Lewis stood outside the Vaughn estate, clutching a worn duffel bag that carried all she owned. The gates rose like iron giants in front of her, taller than any building she'd ever lived in. Behind them stood a mansion of glass and silence. No laughter, no warmth. Just the kind of emptiness money can't fill. She wasn't supposed to be there. No one had called her. No agency had sent her. But something deep inside her chest, had pulled her there like gravity. When the butler opened the door, ready to dismiss her, a voice echoed from the top of the grand staircase. Let her in, Elliot Vaughn's voice. Low, firm, tired, and that's how a waitress stepped into a billionaire's house. A house polished enough to blind, but too cold to breathe in. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air. Nurses moved like ghosts, and at the end of the corridor, behind a door lined with pastel wallpaper, lay the two girls Amara couldn't forget. One of them, Lena, had freckles scattered across her pale cheeks. The other, Nova, had hair so tightly curled it looked like defiance. Both were asleep, both too quiet. Amara dropped her bag and knelt beside the bed. Hi, she whispered, her voice soft enough to be mistaken for prayer. I'm Amara. I don't have a degree. I don't have a title. But I'm here if you'll let me be. Lena stirred. Nova didn't. But for the first time since the diagnosis, someone in that room spoke to them not as patients, but as people. That night when Elliot came home, he found her still there, reading softly from an old book of Southern stories her grandmother once told her. He stood at the doorway, watching. What are you doing? He asked. Amara didn't even look up. Giving them something they haven't had in a while, a presence that doesn't wear gloves. "This isn't charity," he said sharply. "It's a medical crisis." She looked at him calm. "If you've done everything else and they're still dying, maybe it's time to try something different." He didn't reply. But that night, for the first time in weeks, no one cried in their sleep, and that's where it began. Not with medicine, but with presence. Not with wealth, but with warmth. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with a cure. It starts with someone who refuses to walk away. The Vaughn estate looked peaceful from the outside, all marble, mirrors and manicured gardens, but peace is often the mask that pain wears when it wants to stay hidden. Inside, Amara Lewis moved through the hallways like a whisper the walls weren't ready to hear. Her steps were light, her heart steady, but she could feel the eyes on her, quiet, judging, calculating. In houses like this, silence isn't golden. It's a warning. The next morning, Amara walked into the kitchen to make tea for the twins. The moment she entered, the air changed. Conversations died. 3 maids looked up, then quickly down again. A tall woman stood by the marble counter, arms folded. Posture sharp, her name was Carter Mrs. Harrington, the head housekeeper. If the mansion was a kingdom, she was its gatekeeper, polished, proud, and entirely sure of her place in the hierarchy. "Well," she said with a smile too tight to be kind. "You're still here," Amara smiled back politely. "Good morning." Mrs. Harrington's eyes narrowed. "We don't usually serve our guests tea in this kitchen." "I'm not a guest," Amara said simply. "I'm here for Lena and Nova." The woman's expression turned colder than the silver she was polishing. "Let's get something clear, Miss Lewis, was it? You may have impressed Mr. Vaughn with your little act of sympathy, but this house runs on discipline, not feelings. Don't confuse compassion with authority." Amara poured the boiling water, her movements calm, deliberate. "I'm not here to run the house. I'm here to help 2 little girls remember what it feels like to be loved." Mrs. Harrington's lip twitched. "You think love can fix what medicine can't? You're not a doctor. You're not even staff. You're—" Amara didn't let her finish. She looked up, eyes steady. "I'm a human being. That's all the qualification I need to care." The words hung in the air like thunder that never struck. For a moment, no one spoke. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. Mrs. Harrington recovered quickly, masking discomfort with condescension. "This is a world of control. Miss Lewis, money, order, perfection, not pity." Amara set the teacup down, her voice soft but unwavering. "And yet for all that perfection, no one in this house has smiled in weeks." The spoon in Mrs. Harrington's hand stilled. Amara turned, her tea tray steady in her grasp. "If kindness makes me unfit to be here, then maybe this house needs a little less order and a little more heart." She walked out before the woman could reply. The maids exchanged glances, quiet awe flickering in their eyes. For the first time in years, someone had dared to speak truth within those walls. Later that day, the whispers followed her. Not cruel this time, just curious. The chef paused when she walked by. The gardener looked up from his work. Even the security guard at the gate gave her a nod that wasn't quite approval, but not rejection either. Amara didn't walk with arrogance. She didn't have to. Her quiet strength did the talking. Upstairs, she entered the children's room with her usual smile. The lights were dim, machines humming faintly. Soft music playing from a dusty speaker. The twins lay side by side, Lena awake. Nova half-dreaming. "Hey there," Amara said, setting the tea down carefully. "I brought something new today." She pulled from her bag 3 handmade bracelets, beaded, uneven, colorful, the kind a child might make for her sister. "Once upon a time, I made these a long time ago," she said softly, "for someone who never got to wear hers." Lena tilted her head. "Who was she?" Amara smiled sadly. "My little sister. Her name was Mia. She had the same eyes as you." For a moment, silence filled the room, not heavy this time, but gentle, the kind of silence that invites truth to stay. "She used to tell me stories when I was scared," Amara continued, "so I thought maybe I could tell you one of hers." She sat between the 2 beds and began to tell an old story about a bird that forgot how to fly, because everyone told it the sky was too high. Lena listened, wide-eyed. Nova's fingers moved faintly like she was reaching for the sound. When Amara finished, she tied 1 bracelet on each girl's wrist. "For courage," she whispered. Because sometimes bravery doesn't mean fighting dragons. It means waking up one more day. Lena smiled faintly. You'll come back tomorrow? Amara brushed a curl from her forehead. I'll always come back. Spring crept into the Vaughn estate quietly. First a breeze through open curtains, then the scent of magnolia where there used to be antiseptic. For the first time in months, the twins laughed. Not the timid giggles of fragile children, but real belly-deep laughter that made the whole house stop and listen. Every sunrise felt different now. The same halls that once echoed with beeping monitors and whispers were filled with light, with small voices reading bedtime stories backward, with Hope learning how to walk again. Down in the garden, Amara Lewis knelt by the flower beds, gloved hands in the soil. Beside her stood Vaughn, no longer in a suit, just a man learning how to be ordinary again. You ever gardened before? She asked, half smiling. He shook his head. I usually hire people for that. Amara brushed soil from her fingers. Maybe that's why nothing's been growing here. He looked up, brow furrowed. What do you mean? Love doesn't bloom in glass houses, she said simply. It needs dirt, mess, time. For once he didn't argue. He just stared at the fragile green shoots pushing through the earth. Tiny, stubborn, alive. Later that evening, the twins played on a blanket in the grass. Nova's curls shimmered in the golden light. Lena built a castle out of sticks. Elliot watched them, his expression softer than the sunset itself. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. They keep asking about their mother. Amara didn't answer right away. She had learned the value of silence, the kind that gives pain a place to breathe. Finally, she said, What do you tell them? That she's traveling, he murmured. But the truth is, I don't know where she went. He sat on the stone bench, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the sky. Her name was Clara. We met before the money, before the company, before everything became so loud. She was wild, laughed too hard, talked too much, and hated quiet rooms. She told me once that love can't survive in spaces where people whisper instead of speak. Amara listened, eyes soft. She sounds brave. She was, Elliot said, a sad smile forming. But when the girls were born, I tried to make her safe by building walls. Marble walls, security systems, rules. And one day she looked at me and said, Elliot, I'm suffocating in your protection. Then she left. He exhaled, the words heavy but freeing. When the twins got sick, I thought it was punishment. Like God saying, now you'll understand what it feels like to lose something you can't buy back. Amara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Pain doesn't mean punishment. Sometimes it's just the universe asking us to remember what matters. He looked at her then, really looked. Not as the waitress from that night, not as the woman who'd saved his children, but as someone who spoke truth without needing permission. You've changed everything, he said softly. She smiled. No, Mr. Vaughn, you just started listening. The next day, Amara wandered the long west wing of the mansion. Most doors stayed closed, collecting dust. But one at the very end, was slightly ajar. She pushed it open. Inside was a room untouched by time. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains onto a single photograph hanging above the dresser. A woman mid-laugh, hair wild, eyes bright. Clara. Elliot appeared in the doorway, startled to find her there. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old music box. I used to come here every night after she left, he said quietly. Then one day I locked it and pretended it didn't exist. Amara ran a finger over the dust-coated dresser. You can lock a door, but grief finds another way in. He nodded slowly, opening the music box. The warped lullaby began to play, off-key but hauntingly beautiful. She sang this to the girls when they were babies, he whispered. I thought if I stopped hearing it, the pain would stop too. But love doesn't stop hurting, Amara said. It just learns how to grow around the scar. He sat on the bed, shoulders heavy. Do you think she'd forgive me? Amara met his gaze. I think she already has. Maybe she's been waiting for you to forgive yourself. The music box wound down, leaving only silence. But it wasn't the old kind of silence. Cold and empty. It was peaceful, the kind that follows truth finally spoken. Elliot stood, taking the frame from the wall. He placed it on the windowsill where sunlight could reach it. For years I thought this room was haunted, he said. Turns out it was just forgotten. Amara smiled. Then let it remember. That night, the narrator's voice slows, reflective. full of warmth. Sometimes the hardest part of healing isn't surviving the storm. It's learning to open the windows again once it's over. And that's what Vaughn did. He opened the windows to light, to memory, to grace. From that day on, the West Wing was no longer a tomb. It became a gallery of laughter, drawings, and hope reborn. In the weeks that followed, the Vaughn mansion changed in ways no architect could measure. The nurses smiled more. The staff spoke softer. The girls painted murals across the walls, and Amara's voice, steady, kind, unstoppable, became the rhythm of the house. By mid-spring, the garden bloomed wild. Violets, tulips, magnolias. No symmetry, no rules. Just life. Amara watched the twins chase butterflies while Elliot built them a small wooden swing. He wasn't good at it. The ropes uneven. The seat crooked. But every hammer strike carried something medicine never could. Devotion. When he was done, Lena squealed with joy. Nova climbed up beside her. And for the first time since sickness had entered their world, they looked completely free. Elliot turned to Amara. Do you think people like me get second chances? Amara didn't hesitate. Only if they stop trying to earn them and start living them. He smiled, genuine and unguarded. Then I guess this is mine. As the camera of imagination pulls back, the scene glows in the late-day light. Two girls swinging, a father laughing, and a woman whose quiet courage rewrote an entire household's story. When love returns to a place that's forgotten how to feel, it doesn't ask for permission. It just begins. Again. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive like a hero. It comes like Amara Lewis did. Quietly, with a tray in her hands and a truth in her heart. No fancy degrees, no permission from the world, just a conviction that love still matters, especially in places that have forgotten it. The Vaughn mansion wasn't saved by money, or medicine, or management. It was saved by presence, the kind that doesn't wear gloves, the kind that touches without fear. Because love, when it's real, doesn't always need to fix things. Sometimes it just needs to stay. Over the next few months, word spread, not in headlines or gossip columns, but in whispers among nurses, neighbors, and strangers online. They called it the house that healed itself. People came from all over Charleston just to glimpse the mansion where laughter had replaced sorrow. No one knew the full story. Of course, they didn't see the nights Amara stayed awake, humming lullabies to girls who once cried in silence. They didn't see Elliot pacing the halls, learning to say I love you without words. But that's how grace works. Quietly, invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize your whole world has changed. One Sunday afternoon, as the church bells echoed across the estate, Amara sat on the porch steps with the twins. They were painting, each small hand gripping a brush, every stroke messy and full of life. Lena painted butterflies, Nova painted the sun, and Amara just watched. Smiling, Elliot came out with 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her, then paused. You know, he said softly, when this all began, I thought you were just temporary. Amara chuckled. Most people do. But you became the reason I remembered what home feels like. She looked at him, eyes reflecting the same gentle strength that had carried her through every moment. Home isn't a place, Mr. Vaughn, she said. It's what happens when people choose to care. He nodded, eyes glistening. Then you've built one here. Later that evening, the girls performed a small show in the living room. Paper crowns, pillowcase capes, laughter filling every corner. When it was over, they all clapped, even the maids and butlers who had once avoided Jasmine's eyes. Now they joined in, their smiles unguarded. Amara stood in the back watching. She wasn't their mother, wasn't a nurse, wasn't even supposed to be there, but she had become something greater. A symbol, a living reminder that compassion still had power. You see, this isn't just a story about a rich man and his children. It's about the woman the world almost ignored, and how her humanity redefined what healing meant. In a society obsessed with success, Amara Lewis was the kind of woman who reminded people that empathy is the highest form of intelligence, that dignity doesn't wear designer clothes, that the strongest people are often the ones carrying invisible burdens and still choosing to show kindness. Weeks turned into months. The girls grew stronger. The doctors began to talk about unexpected recoveries, about remission. But deep down, Elliot knew it wasn't just medicine that saved them. It was something the charts couldn't record. The power of being seen, being loved, being believed in. One morning, as spring turned to summer, Amara prepared to leave. Her bag was small, just like the first day she arrived. The girls begged her to stay. Nova cried, clutching her hand. "But who'll tell us stories now?" Amara smiled, crouching down to meet her gaze. "You will. You'll tell your own. That's how stories live forever." Elliot stepped forward, his voice low. "If you ever want to come back." She looked at him, eyes warm, steady, unbroken. "I was never really gone," she said. "You'll hear me in their laughter, in this house, in every quiet morning that doesn't feel empty anymore." He nodded, unable to speak. For the first time, he didn't try to control the moment. He just let it be. And as Amara walked down the garden path, sunlight filtered through the trees like a blessing, a reminder that sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they just show up when the world least deserves them, and stay until it remembers how to love again. Life doesn't always give us miracles wrapped in lightning and thunder. Sometimes they arrive wrapped in humility, in the hands of a woman carrying tea, in the eyes of a child learning to smile again. Months later, an article went viral. From Billionaire's Tragedy to the House of Hope, the story behind the Vaughn triplets. The piece didn't mention Amara by name, but the world felt her in every line. People online began calling her the woman who stayed, a symbol of resilience, a quiet revolution. Comments flooded in. "I want to be like her. She makes me believe in kindness again. Where is she now?" No one knew, but maybe that was the point. Because the real heroes of life don't stay for fame. They stay to make sure others can keep living. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you don't belong in certain rooms, or that your love isn't enough, remember Amara Lewis. Remember the black woman who walked into a mansion of sorrow and turned it into a home of hope, who faced arrogance with empathy, who showed a broken man that compassion doesn't need permission. Her story isn't about wealth or race or status. It's about presence. The kind of presence that saves lives quietly. One heartbeat, one act of love at a time. Maybe healing doesn't come from doctors or destiny. Maybe it comes from the courage to show up. Again and again, even when no one expects you to. Because that's what Amara Lewis did. And maybe that's what we all need to learn to do. If this story touched your heart, share it. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because somewhere out there, another person needs to be reminded that love still wins. This was Hidden Worth, where black stories meet truth, compassion, and the courage to stay human. I'm your Dave, and I'll see you in the next story.